pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. Supervisor O'Day and Decker are both excused this evening. We'll move on to citizen comments. Are there any citizens to speak? Please state your name and address for the record. You'll have 5 minutes.
To the August 2nd Human Services meeting, I would like to address the prescribing psychologist resolution by Supervisor Rose one more time. For the record, NAMI, and this is NAMI National, has not changed the position and do not endorse to expand prescribing privileges to psychologists. This being said, Wisconsin has a dramatic shortfall of psychiatrists and is currently attempting to bridge this gap with, as I mentioned last time, advanced practice nurse practitioners. They have been very effective. We are also using telepsychiatry. And I'd like to add, since the last meeting, we have a new Wisconsin Telemed network has opened an office here in Kenosha on 39th Avenue. And they are currently providing 4 telepsychiatry screens and accept Medicaid. This adds to the current capability provided by Professional Service Group and the Rogers Hospital unit located on Highway 50. So this is really a plus to the community. Former State Assembly person Sandy Pash has suggested that prescribing psychologists be looked at as an option to deal with seriously lack of providers in our state. The details need to be seriously addressed, specifically education, oversight, and ongoing monitoring. Therefore, she is supportive of prescriptive authority with certain limitations. Professional boundary issues can be protective of patient interests, but often they protect a profession more than a patient. And I think we're all aware when you're talking about prescribing psychologists, you're dealing with psychiatrists and psychologists. And the two different professions, we need both of them, but this is something I think we all should be aware of. I would also ask, and I don't know if it's been addressed yet and would be part of the process for the resolution if you're really going to go forward, but what is the position of our local legislators on this matter? That would be important, I would think, to get it forward. So with that being said, I wish you all the best. Vote your conscience. I know it really ran right through the Human Services Committee. And so with that, we'll continue to support mental health awareness in our community. I look for your support on the coming budget. We have some opportunities coming up, and I hope we can capture those. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. Any other citizens to speak? Any other citizens? Seeing none, citizen comments are now closed. Announcements of the chair, I have 2. Just a reminder that Mike Gravely will be here on September 6th. We will be having a committee of the whole at 6:15, and he will be giving his presentation on heroin. It's been brought to our attention that the post office is not delivering our packets on time, those that are still getting them in the paper form. So we are going to discontinue the the mail service and ask that anyone who wants to have their packet picked up, they can either come here or we can have them sent out to the 45 and 50 building. So please contact Mary, our county clerk, and she can set that up for you. Supervisor Overman. Your light was on?
Oh, I just pushed it for...
Oh, okay. Okay, that's it. Supervisor reports. Supervisor Overman, you have the floor.
I'm just going to be very brief. I know I've reported on this all of this at our last meeting, just a couple of highlights. The paving season naturally is in high swing, and we have not only been doing that, but as I reported, we've been getting a lot of new contracts from the other municipalities, and the business is good. We are taking all the business. It has put us a little bit behind on our own paving schedule, but nothing that we can't handle, and the crews are responding well, and the weather has been responding. If you notice, that's why the golf industry is doing well this summer, because after the wet spring we thought we were in trouble, and weekends everything has been just fantastic. Our golf courses have picked up and are ahead of last year. The Parks Department has just been swamped between the activities of the youth groups, the biking groups, disc golf, everything that we've partnered with. If you visit any of our county parks, Pringle Nature Center also, with all the programs that you see they list. The Katy Park, one of our newest and very popular parks, is closed at this time because we are putting in our regular road that will be paved and a parking area, and we're going to have a launch area for the dive crews to train at for life-saving purposes. The Brookside Project, that's the biggest project that we have going on right now, is near schedule, even after us discovering some bad soils and having to do some remediation that way. Again, the weather is saving everything. Mr. Arbor told me at the last meeting that he and I had that the state inspectors were just astonished at the last project that they had left prior to coming to Brookside to see the workmanship that was being done at Brookside. They said they don't usually see that on public property. They were very impressed, so everything is going well there. And again, we're just slightly behind schedule, but I think we're within a week, so that's not bad on a $20 million project. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Overman. Supervisor Gens, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to give a report on joint services. Our project manager's contract came to an end, and it was decided to move forward internally to finish off the product or the software upgrade. So we are doing that with all the parties participating, and it's going slower than we want. The actual effective start date has been moved to February from December, but we have no hang-ups and problems. So we on the board have always taken the stance that it's better to make sure everything goes smoothly and safely rather than trying to rush something forward. So I do plan to ask Tom to come in and give an update after the budget over the holidays when the meetings are lighter on where we're at with that. But I just wanted to let you know also the firing range that we did approve the stopgap repairs to, that should be completed by now. It was started our last joint services meeting, and that's just to make it safe, not do any major upgrades. So that should be done at this point as well. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Getz. Supervisor Blau, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to give an update on the Pringle Nature Center board meeting I attended on August 10th. Board business, they had elected a new treasurer. Her name is Rainey Ernst, and she comes with a small business nonprofit CPA background, and she's also a Scoutmaster, so they thought she was an extremely good fit, and so she started immediately with the Pringle Nature Center board. Also, Barry Thomas met with Matt Collins, and Barry's the PNC Board President, to renew the Kenosha County contract for another 2 years. And also, we discussed fundraising efforts as part of the PNC fundraising. They've developed this corporate package project to provide funding in the form of corporate sponsorship. They've identified like 12 different companies that they would like to approach with this idea to maybe sponsor and help raise money to support the Pringle Nature Center. Then other news, I don't know if anyone noticed in the paper yesterday, Lauren Mossman won a Girl Scout Gold Award, and they had a little ceremony for her at the PNC, and she received this award after spending 100+ hours replacing invasive species plants around the PNC building with native species. And it was attended, the ceremony, by Senator Bob Wirch, the Chancellor from UW Parkside, Deborah Ford, and the Girl Scout of Milwaukee Team Program Coordinator, Caitlin Condon. So they did put a nice article in yesterday's Kenosha News. And also other events going on over there. They have started yoga in the park, and also Saturday, September 17th, will be the Fall Fun Fest at 11 a.m. And also on November 5th will be the 5K Prairie and Woods Run and Hike. So if you want any further details, you can check out the PNC website. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Blau. Supervisor Boyd Frederick, you have the floor.
Thank you. At our meeting this evening, Teddy Winnett came in and talked to us about the present budget situation when it comes to UW Extension. The fact that work groups are meeting, and in next meeting, which will be on the 29th of August, is going to be the first combined extension meeting between Racine and Kenosha. In our meeting this evening, we passed one rule change that will be on the agenda for our next meeting. We tabled another one that was brought up by Supervisor Decker, who was absent. And when it comes to supervisor reports being separate from supervisor comments, there's going to be a WCA meeting on that later this month that'll be attended by Mr. Cardamone, that will be able to clarify that a little bit better.
Thank you, Supervisor Frederick. Any other supervisor reports? Seeing none, I will close supervisor reports and move on to County Clerk.
County Executive Appointments, 14, Roger Johnson to serve on the Kenosha County Traffic Safety Commission.
Refer to Judiciary and Law.
Ordinance 7 from Planning Development Extension Education Committee, proposed amendments to the Kenosha County General Zoning and Shoreline Floodplain Zoning Ordinance in accordance with Section 59.694 of the Wisconsin State Statutes in order to amend ordinance language relative to existing non-conforming structures. Decker, yes. Poole, yes. Galitsky, yes. Gilmore, yes. Bostrom, yes.
Supervisor Poole, you have the floor.
I move Ordinance 7, excuse me.
I have a first by Supervisor Poole and a second by Supervisor Bostrom. Supervisor Poole.
Ordinance 7 deals with amendments to Chapter 12 of the Kenosha County General Zoning and Shoreland Floodplain Zoning Ordinance. This is the second reading of this item. The amendments pertain to existing non-conforming structures. The Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee reviewed the proposed amendments at a public hearing held July 13, 2016. The committee recommends approval of the amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Poole. Any questions on the? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Resolution 15 from the Legislative and Human Services Committee, a resolution calling on the Wisconsin State Legislature to pass legislation authorizing psychologists with special training to prescribe medication. Human Service Committee, Gable, yes. Hallman abstain. Poole, yes. Blau, yes. Berg, yes. Dodge, yes. Retzlaff, yes. Legislative, Boyd Frederick, yes. Hallman, yes. Galitsky, yes. Poole, yes. Franco, yes. Berg, yes. Decker, excused.
Supervisor Gable, you have the floor.
I moved Resolution 15.
I have a first by Supervisor Gable and a second by Supervisor Boyd Frederick. Supervisor Gable.
This was the second time this thing has been brought before this committee. Our Human Services Committee met on the last 2 Tuesdays ago, and we had a discussion on this. And the feeling I have and we've listened to Jack as far as NAMI goes, and we had Dr. Wolf at our committee, who was a prescribing psychologist. The feeling I have is at this level, we cannot decide if this is good or bad. This should be sent up to Madison, where they can bring all the players in and discuss it. I mean, we don't have the ability at this level to bring in the AMA, the psychiatrists, the pharmaceutical companies. This is a great resolution. It points out a real problem, but there are issues about prescribing, so the committee passes almost unanimously to send it on to Madison, and I would be more than happy to lobby our legislators to get this discussed, because this could be a solution or a real help to the problem we're having with the mentally ill in the state of Wisconsin.
Thank you, Supervisor Gable. Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. If you recall, this board authorized a study of the mental health problems and what are some of the solutions, suggestions to reduce our costs. This was one of them. This issue was really brought home to the Finance Committee at our most recent meeting. And Lori Staves from Human Services pointed out to us that in the 2016 budget, we authorized some $2,189,604 to address the mental health problem, but that it is projected by the end of the year that we will still be short some $655,608. Keeping in mind that in 2015, this board authorized and budgeted not quite $1.4 million for the same issue. So this is a fast-growing problem, a fast-growing financial issue that needs to be really looked at very seriously and addressed by Human Services. We have a budget coming up in the fall. We certainly want your input from Human Services. This is one of, I think, the prime issues to be looked at, whatever that figure is in the county executive's budget. This proposal this evening is some effort to address that problem, but there's got to be other solutions that we have to look at other than just appropriating all this kind of money time and again. We can't keep doubling whatever we're appropriating for any given year because if we're looking at almost $2.7 million this year versus budgeting about 1.4 million last year, you can see where this kind of budget is heading into an extraordinarily serious problem. So I urge your support this evening, but this is not the ultimate remedy at all. It is just one small attempt to address this problem. Again, I hope Human Services looks at that report again and comes in with some suggestions in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Hallman, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm actually in favor of this, despite what it looks like on paper. When this initially came out of committee the first time, we were told later that Mr. Rose had some objections, and he wasn't there to voice what those were. And I do believe that our constituents are one of our greatest resources and that we should tap them for information so that we can have better decision making. So as a result of respect for him and knowing that he's been working in this area on these kinds of issues, I actually abstained for the purposes of being consistent. I also abstained again a second time, but I do want to stress, with all due respect to the committee chair, we have the ability to bring whomever it is in the room that we would like to get whatever information it is that we need. It just takes ingenuity and effort. If you want to get Obama on his way out the door, that is possible. Difficult, but not impossible. So the realm of what we think is impossible is much smaller than we typically give consideration for. Having said that, I do want to remind members that we still have the power as this body of telling our legislators what they ought to do. Some of my concern around this doesn't necessarily move in that direction, and I would prefer that as opposed to saying convene a bunch of people and decide. We have more than enough power and ability to do that and look at them and say, this is the best outcome for Kenosha. This is what our people need. And as far as I understand this job, I thought that's what we're here to do. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Hallman. Supervisor Wambolt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Originally, I had this long speech. I was going to ultimately vote against this. But I do agree with some of my colleagues and Jack Rose, who said maybe this should go up to the state level and we should talk to our legislators and express our concerns. But I do want to, point out at least one thing. At the committee level, I didn't attend. I did listen to it online. Dr. Wolf was there. He made a great argument for psychologists. But let's remember, it was one-sided. It was from the point of view of psychologists. There was not a psychiatrist there. As one of my colleagues just pointed out, we could have invited others. They could have showed up on their own, I guess. With that said, I just want to point out how important this is. I did mention at the last meeting that I am a member of NAMI. I'm on the board. We are talking about psychotropic drugs here. These are drugs that mess with or have something to do with our minds, and it can be very dangerous if it is not treated properly, if those conditions are not treated properly. So I just want to bring that to the forefront. I do think this should go to the state level now after thinking about it a little bit more. So I appreciate you all listening to me, and thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Wambolt. Supervisor Skalitsky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It took me a little bit to remember why I supported this, but then we hadn't had a couple meetings here. And I remember we referred it back to committee. And I was hopeful that perhaps there would be some amendment or some different wording. And I got to get ahead of myself. As I did in the past, I want to commend Supervisor Rose for at least proposing something. My primary concern on this is it gets back to what Supervisor Wambolt said, and these are psychotropic drugs. We already have a massive opioid over-prescription issue that's led to a heroin epidemic out there. And I do have concerns over the difference between psychologists and psychiatrists. This clearly states that we urge our legislation to pass, or our legislators to pass legislation to authorize prescribing authority to psychologists. I wish it was just a little bit more broadly stated to more seriously and actively look into the mental health care issues that we're having and start proposing some realistic and perhaps maybe unproven and other times proven approaches to this. So I'm a little bit torn. I like the idea that we are, as a body, taking into consideration something that is a problem in our community, and we cannot ignore it. But I think this is just so narrow in scope. I'm reluctant to pass it. I'm reluctant to not pass it. And I do appreciate this body for giving me the opportunity to just share my thoughts. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Retzloff, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with the passing this resolution. I agree also with Mr. Rose about the budget issues that we've had, and he just talked about. That is important. When we ask questions about NAMI, why were they against it? And I think Mr. Rose, Jack Rose, probably didn't know all the answers, but he said it basically came down to a turf war. Psychiatrists versus psychologists. That's both what the people that spoke admitted. So to me, that's pretty weak of an excuse, because we asked them, well, what are their reasons from NAMI for saying they're against it, and there weren't any, at least presented to us. So that's one thing. In 2009, this bill was a Senate Bill 180, and actually our local senator, Bob Wirch, was a sponsor of this. It didn't go anywhere. Sandy, as mentioned by Jack Rose, Sandy Pash did bring it up, and so it has been addressed, but it's a long time ago. So maybe if we could resurrect that with some of the local politicians, they may be able to help. So And I think, Mr. Skalinsky, you said something about this opiate problem. That is true, there's no question about this, but remember, that's more of a pain-killing problem than mental health issues a little bit. And we'll hear that from the new DA, will explain that to us. I've heard his presentation. He'll explain the big difference in that. So I would not concern yourself with that right now if you're going to vote for this. So that's just my comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Retzlaff. Supervisor Gens, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wasn't going to speak, but I am the one that referred this back to the committee. I did go back to the committee meeting and listen and watch, and even Jack Rose, who said that, you know, NAMI was against it, like Supervisor Retzlaff said, didn't come up with a lot of facts of why. I think deep down, he's looking for a spotlight to be shined on mental health, and I think this is just one of the ways to do that. But as Supervisor Rose said, this isn't even the tip of the iceberg about where we have to go with mental health. And it's not just the finance, it's our constituents, the people, and the budgeting. And I brought up at the Human Services meeting, where are we with the study and some of the implications? And I was assured that that was coming up at the next meeting. So I'm totally satisfied with that. When we get to this actual resolution, I mean, somebody made a comment in that discussion, I think it was Dr. Wolf, but he said something to the effect that, well, MDs are you know, prescribing this stuff, and are they the best person to know this? So I was where I wanted it to go back. I didn't want to just have people setting off prescriptions and proposing drugs to throw at a problem. But after hearing the different sides and the whys, I'm totally convinced that this could go up and they could discuss it. Whatever happens with it, it's just a start to the problem. So that's my take on why I sent it back, what happened at the committee, and my feelings. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gens. Supervisor Dodge, you have the floor.
Yes, one important question was asked at the committee meeting, and Dr. Wolf was asked if there had been any cases where psychologists had prescribed psychotropic drugs and resulted in lawsuits from improper assignment of the drugs in any of the states where it had been legalized, where they could do that. And the answer to that question was no. There had been no lawsuits where they had psychologists write those prescriptions. So that was one of the main factors that I think that we should support this and move it on to Madison. So I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Dodge. Supervisor Blau, you have the floor.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Tagging on to Supervisor Dodge's comments, I did also ask Dr. Wolf, had there been any deaths or any adverse events related to any of the prescribing within the 4 states that do have this law, and he reported negative as well. And I'm hoping that everybody will vote in favor of this, even though we can't do anything really at this level, to bring it up to the state and to ask NAMI, instead of saying no, can you suggest, okay, what would you be okay with? Because I'm hearing a lot of no's, that this is not safe. I'm a nurse, and I work in patient safety. This is what I do for a living. So, I just want to be able to know what the alternatives are if you don't want, psychologists prescribing. There seems to be okay with oversight of nurse practitioners working with psychiatrists. I don't see why we can't have that same kind of oversight with psychiatrists and psychologists. I had asked Dr. Wolf about that, and he didn't seem to have a problem with it, so I'm hoping that maybe they can come up with a solution, because this problem is getting far too big. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Blau. Seeing no other lights, roll call has been requested. Yes, if you're in favor of the resolution, no if you are against. Mike? Supervisor Gable, can you? Motion passes. County Clerk?
Ordinance number 8 from Planning Development Extension Education Committee, an ordinance regarding Lois Lasco Trust owner, Linda Tiso agent, requesting a rezoning from A1 Agricultural Preservation District, C2 Upland Resource Conservancy District, and C1 Lowland Resource Conservancy District to A2 General Agricultural District, C2 Upland Resource Conservancy District, and C1 Lowland Resource Conservancy District, Town of Salem. Decker excused, Poole, yes. Skalitsky, yes. Gilmore, yes. Bostrom, yes.
Supervisor Poole?
I move Ordinance 8.
I have a first by Supervisor Poole, second by Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Poole?
This property is located on the south side of State Highway 50, approximately 1/2 mile west of the intersection with 265th Avenue. The rezoning would allow a division of 75.02 acres into 2 parcels for estate planning purposes. The Town of Salem recommended approval of the request.
Thank you, Supervisor Poole. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Ordinance 9 from the Planning Development Extension Education Committee, an ordinance regarding Highway 50 Storage LLC owner, Richard Hoffman agent, requesting a rezoning from B3 Highway Business District, R2 Suburban Single Family Residential District, and C2 Upland Resource Conservancy District to B3 Highway Business District and C2 Upland Resource Conservancy District, Town of Salem. Decker excused, Poole, yes. Skalitsky, yes. Gilmore, yes. Bostrom, yes.
Supervisor Poole?
I move Ordinance 9.
I have a first by Supervisor Poole and a second by Supervisor Gilmore. Supervisor Poole?
This property is located on Highway 50 and is close to Highway B. And what they're doing is they're splitting the property there so they can build a storage building there. And it has been approved by the Town of Salem.
Seeing no other lights, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Ordinance 10 from the Planning Development Extension Education Committee, an ordinance regarding Edward C. Dalton, 1/3 interest, Suzanne M. Dalton, 1/3 interest, and Dalton Jr. Revocable Trust owner, Joseph Dalton agent, PDEC sponsor, requesting a rezoning from C2 Upland Resource Conservancy District, R3 Urban Single Family Residential District, and C1 Lowland Resource Conservancy District to C2 Upland Resource Conservancy District and C1 Lowland Resource Conservancy District, Town of Salem. Decker excused, Poole, yes. Skalitsky, yes. Gilmore, yes. Bostrom, yes.
Supervisor Poole?
I move Ordinance 10.
I have a first by Supervisor Poole and a second by Supervisor Bostrom. Supervisor Poole?
This property is located on the north and south sides of County Highway F, Silver Lake Road, approximately 2/10 mile east of the intersection with the Canadian National Railroad tracks. The rezoning is considered a map amendment to reflect actual current field conditions of the wetlands. The Town of Salem recommended approval of the request.
Seeing no lights, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Ordinance 11 from the Planning Development Extension Education Committee, an ordinance regarding Jeffrey A. Badke owner, request an amendment to the adopted land use plan map for Kenosha County, 2035 map 65 of the comprehensive plan, from farmland protection, general agricultural and open land, INRA and non-farmed wetland, to farmland protection, suburban density residential, and non-farmed wetland, Town of Paris. Decker excused, Poole, yes. Skalitsky, yes. Gilmore, yes. Bostrom, yes.
Supervisor Poole?
I move Ordinance 11.
I have a first by Supervisor Poole and a second by Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Poole?
This property is located on the west side of County Trunk Highway MB, or 136th Avenue, 1/4 mile south of the intersection with County Trunk Highway E, 12th Street. This comprehensive plan amendment would allow a revision of map 65 of the comprehensive plan from farmland protection, general agricultural and open land, INRA, and non-farmed wetland to farmland protection, suburban density residential, and non-farmed wetland. The Town of Paris recommends approval of the request.
Seeing no lights, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Ordinance 12 from the Planning Development Extension Education Committee, an ordinance regarding Jeffrey A. Badke, owner, requesting a rezoning from A1 Agricultural Preservation District, A2 General Agricultural District, and C1 Lowland Resource Conservancy District to A1 Agricultural Preservation District, R2 Suburban Single-Family Residential District, and C1 Lowland Resource Conservancy District, Town of Paris. Decker excused. Poole, yes. Skalitsky, yes. Gilmore, yes. Bostrom, yes.
Supervisor Poole?
I move ordinance 12.
I have a first by Supervisor Poole and a second by Supervisor Gilmore. Supervisor Poole.
This is the same property as in ordinance 11 there. And the property is located on the west side of County Trunk Highway MB, 1/4 mile south of the intersection with County Trunk Highway E. The rezoning would allow a proposed CSM to create 2 single-family residential parcels from an existing 72-acre parcel and combine remnant farmland. The Town of Paris recommended approval of the request.
Seeing no lights, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Ordinance 13 from the Planning Development and Extension Education Committee, an ordinance regarding proposed comprehensive plan amendment action 50 LLC owner, Mark Merkling agent, request an amendment to the adopted land use plan map for Kenosha County 2035, map 65 of the comprehensive plan, from suburban density residential and non-farmed wetland to commercial and non-farmed wetland, Town of Wheatland. Decker excused. Poole, yes. Skalitsky, yes. Gilmore, yes. Bostrom, yes.
Supervisor Poole.
I move ordinance 13.
I have a first by Supervisor Poole and a second by Supervisor Bostrom. Supervisor Poole.
This property is located on the northwest corner of the intersection of County Trunk Highway 50 and 392nd Avenue, Town of Wheatland. The comprehensive plan amendment would allow a revision of map 65 of the comprehensive plan from suburban density residential and non-farmed wetland to commercial and non-farmed wetland. The Town of Wheatland recommends approval of the request.
Seeing no lights, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Ordinance 14 from the Planning Development and Extension Education Committee, an ordinance regarding Action 50 LLC owner, Mark Merkling agent, requesting a rezoning from A2 General Agricultural District to B3 Highway Business District and C1 Lowland Resource Conservancy District, Town of Wheatland. Decker excused. Poole, yes. Skalitsky, yes. Gilmore, yes. Bostrom, yes.
Supervisor Poole.
I move ordinance 14.
I have a first by Supervisor Poole and a second by Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Poole.
This property is located on the northwest corner of the intersection of County State Highway 50 and 392nd Avenue, Town of Wheatland. The rezoning would allow for a new generation RV to sell, service, store, and display new and used motorhomes, travel trailers, fifth wheels, fold-down campers, along with retail parts and accessory sales. The Town of Wheatland recommended approval of the request.
Seeing no lights, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Resolution 35 from the Finance and Administration Committee, a resolution authorizing and providing for the sale and issuance of $14,100,000 general obligation promissory notes, Series 2016A, and all related details. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Kubicki, yes. Retzloff, yes. Esposito, yes. Gens, yes. Dodge, yes.
Supervisor Rose.
All right, thank you, Chair. And I would note that the new resolution before you is for the sale and issuance of $13,965,000.
So that's the resolution that you're moving then?
Yes, that is the one that I'm going to be moving. That's the one that passed the Finance Committee this evening. It is lower than the figure on your agenda.
Okay. So I have a first by Supervisor Rose and a second by Vice Chair Esposito. Supervisor Rose.
All right, thank you. And I'm going to call upon Mr. Harrigan, who's our advisor from Ehlers on this, but would note that the interest rates, the bids are better than expected, and thus he'll tell you more about the savings and the particulars. I would also have you note that at page 1, the sale day report of today, it notes our new Standard & Poor credit rating as well as Fitch rating, and both were upgraded to AA+. And this was the result of a group from Kenosha County, including the Vice Chair, myself, Mr. Gersten, and the county executive, and Todd Battle of PCABA, Mr. Harrigan, and we made a presentation there. I thought it was very effective. Obviously, it was effective to obtain this rating. If you're not familiar with those ratings, the AA plus is one notch below AAA. And that I said many times before in reporting results of committee meetings, that has been the goal of the Finance Committee, to see to it that the rating is increased, and the ultimate goal is to see it as AAA. I think we're going in that right direction. If we are continuing in that direction, I certainly foresee a AAA in our future. So with that, I'll call upon Mike Harrigan, with the chair's consent, to give you some of the more details on the sale.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. It's a pleasure to be here with such great news for you this evening. The bids that you received 5 bids today from around the country, from underwriters that were seeking the right to buy these bonds. And clearly, the strength of the bidding was reflected by the improvement in your credit rating. You know, I've been doing this for a long time, and I can tell you that it's very rare that you have 2 rating agencies simultaneously act to upgrade a credit. Credit rating agencies are there to protect investors, and it's much easier for them to move a credit rating down than it is to move it up. When they move it up, they really want to be sure that the credit that they're evaluating has their act together, and they don't want to be embarrassed going forward by some nasty thing happening based on their opinion. And so they do extra diligence when they're doing these things, and especially on an upgrade decision. So you really benefited by this today. The true interest rate here that was bid by the low bidder, which was Baird in this case, was a 1.5488%. 1.54% for 10-year money is pretty darn good. We were estimating about a 1.92% level, and they bid a premium. It all boils down to the fact that you're getting this money at a cost of about $333,000 less than what we estimated going in. Now, of course, you did benefit by the timing of your decision to go to market. The last page of our report has a graph that shows where interest rates have been, and you can see you're just off, very minimally, just off the low point for the entire year. But not only that, that low point for the year was the low point for the last 15 years. So you're in very good shape in terms of your timing and your execution. This credit rating business is interesting, but it doesn't happen by itself. The county finance department, you enjoy people work here that have a very high reputation in the industry. The finance committee and the county board over the years have strived for this type of action by rating agencies. So the county board and the finance committee should be very proud, not only this one, but prior ones, for the fact that you've stuck by your plan. You've used good judgment, and you're good stewards of the county's money. And it's recognized through those report cards, so congratulations. Happy to answer any questions if anybody has one.
Are there any questions for Mr. Harrigan? No? Are we going to, do you have the questions? Okay. Supervisor Poole, do you have a question for Mr. Harrigan also? Okay, let's go with the question. I'm going to clear the board. Let's go with questions for Mr. Harrigan first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Harrigan, thank you for coming here this evening. I'm new to the county board, but I've been involved in municipal politics for 6 years. And I have to commend you on the level of detail in the report that you provided today. As compared to the other body of politics in town, it was not as detailed, so I congratulate you on that. The question I have for you, though, You made the comment about 10-year money at 1.54%, which was what we received. That's like almost U.S. Treasury yields. Is
Yes.
that common for municipal bonds and U.S. Treasuries to be trading so close together?
They do. The munis track very closely with treasuries. And we're in an interesting period in time right now where the munis, because of the fact that you've got particularly at this higher level of rating, you do enjoy almost as good a cost of money as the federal government does. And the spreads have narrowed over the course of the last 10 months.
And that was going to be my comment, and I've got quite a bit of history in this, and that I felt that it was rather uncommon. So kudos to the Finance Department, and kudos to you on the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Supervisor Bostrom. Any other questions for Mr. Harrigan? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Harrigan. We will now open it up
Thank you, Madam
to
Chair.
the floor. Supervisor Skalitsky, you have the floor.
And this could either be to Chairman Rose or Mr. Harrigan. Why did the value decrease from 14.1 to 13.965?
We were able to reduce the size of the issue because if you take a look at the bid tabulation on page 2 of the document, you'll notice that the price that's quoted there's a column entitled price. And what that's reflecting is the dollar amount that the underwriter, in this case Baird with their syndicate members, are willing to pay the county for the face value of $14,100,000. They're willing to pay $14,763,000. The county doesn't need all of that money to satisfy its projects. So we reduced the size of the issue to cover what is required. The balance is being applied to debt service.
Okay, thank you. And then to Chairman Rose, because I've looked, could you give some greater detail into items that are listed in here? And they may have been listed elsewhere, I just don't recall seeing them. Items A, B I think was already talked about by Chairman Gens. C, and I don't, and then I guess to an extent F, but I'm really A and C. I'm just, what are we proposing here to spend that money on?
Okay, all of these items, and I said this when we first passed the resolution, all of these items were in the 2016 budget, such things as road construction, the IT department equipment there, the software project. We have a grant here for Kenosha Area Business Development, $760,000.
No, I'm aware of those.
Yes, okay.
Specifically, if it was stated which, because road and highway improvements is a pretty broad topic. We're going back in history to borrow against something that was not completely, that was authorized but not spent. And I'm wondering, there's got to be a specific area or project that is been identified that this money needs to be spent on. And I don't sit on the finance committee, or so I didn't hear the review.
Perhaps I could call on Mr. Gersten to remind us of that list.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Maybe I'm the only one in the room that doesn't understand the question. But I mean, we have a CIP that we adopted. This funds the CIP. It's in the budget. The detail is in the budget. There's a page for each item, breaks down how it's funded. In addition, the board had authorized $250,000 to spend on economic development, and but also an additional $500,000 for economic development. So that is also included in this issue. That addition, so $750,000 for economic development. So. Maybe the supervisor could clarify the question for me. I did listen to the question, but the best answer I can give is that it's the CIP in the budget, and it was approved by the county board in part of the 2016 budget.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Mr. Goodson. I'm talking about items that were back from 2010, 2014, were the ones that I was interested. If it's in there as a line item specifically, I'm just not going to recall 2016's budget, but if it's in there, that's fine. I just was curious if we had a particular application for these funds, not just road improvements.
Well, these were Mike, these were the initial resolutions, right? And what we're drawing from the initial resolutions. So part of it was for public safety software, which I think you know is we have the chair of that committee is on this board, Chairman Gens. And,
no, I'm good at the software. I'm good at the CABA. That's fine. I appreciate your answer, Mr. Goodson.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Sklitsky. Supervisor Retzloff, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm definitely for this, as you can see. A couple things. I know where Mr. Sklitsky's coming from. When we were put this in the Finance Committee, I asked the same kind of questions. And the answer is these lenders sort of don't care. We asked for 14 million, you got it. I don't care what it's for. That's kind of the answer I got. So I think we need to spell that out better. Exact details. Now I know it's in the budget, it's been approved, I'm not saying that, but that should be clarified. And just because the lenders don't care, they care, but they don't because they don't ask. I mean, they don't, I guess. That's what I was told. So maybe we could do a little bit better with that. What's great about the county right now is 85% of our lending is on 10-year amortization, which is great. So if you're a prudent person with debt service, we're right there. I can't think of any way of doing this any better. You know, it couldn't be any better managed. We're below our debt ceilings, both from our county standpoint and from the state's recommendations. So I fully support this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Retzloff. Mr. Harrigan, you wanted to respond to that?
Well, I thought it could maybe be helpful in responding to the question about, or the comment about what the banks care about in terms of money being borrowed. And I wasn't at the meeting at which that came up, I don't think. But let me just explain a little bit about the process that's gone through here when you go through a borrowing of this nature. The first step in this process, one of the first steps to get a resolution before you, your bond attorney at Foley and Lardner has to go through very specifically each and every item that is proposed to be borrowed for, and to certify that those items qualify for public financing of this nature under the statutes, under Wisconsin statutes, because there are very specific things that you can and can't borrow money for as a municipality, and some things you can use notes for, some things you have to use bonds for. So that's something that's looked at very carefully by the bond attorney. The banks care about it, but they rely on the opinion of the bond attorney that this has been vetted and that they satisfy the statutory purposes. I don't know if that was what you were driving at, but I wanted to make, I didn't think it was, if there's an impression by the board or the supervisor that the banks don't care about what you're borrowing for, I think that they do care, and they're relying on the legal opinion of bond counsel to certify that it meets the statutory requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Harrigan. Supervisor Grady, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is more just a comment than a question. When you look at the situation we're in, you know, Kenosha County, without a doubt, is on a growth pattern. We have an improved bond rating, and so at this reading this evening, we have to borrow less money because our interest rates are lower. We're just in that type of position. So this is not done in a vacuum. Many players are a part of it. We have a very strong administration department here as far as the finance goes. We have a county executive who prudently, puts forth a budget that's responsible. And in our own particular area in this room, all of us elected individuals, one of our primary, if not the most important thing that we have to take care of is the county budget and the ability to make sure that it goes through prudently. So when we have things that come before us, such as a budget resolution where we advise our county executive, we would like to see no more than this type of appropriation made. These are all important parts. You know, we hear discussions where we say, oh, this is just advisory, it doesn't matter. No, it does matter, and tonight's evidence of that. Last thing I'll make in closing is, as a prospering, growing county, we will see more come across our desk in terms of infrastructure. We're going to see paving projects, we're going to see capital improvements, we're going to have to invest in ourselves to make us continue forward. So that's my comment, and thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Grady. Supervisor Rose, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. Now, I have my budget book here. If you have your budget book, just to answer Supervisor Skalitsky's question in particular, look at the back under capital projects, page 3. And you'll see a whole list of dollar amounts there. Actually, we've borrowed more or less than we originally anticipated, which was $16,207,000. You've heard the $13,900,000 plus. In terms of answering your specifics thereafter, it does answer the specifics, and it's quite a few pages, and I can go through it page by page with you. I don't know if you have those books with you, but for example, replacing the Kenosha County J.D. Edwards software, that's part of the information systems budget. The software and hardware support for data, voice, and video needs for all Kenosha County departments. A countywide survey program for mapping and geographic information systems activities. We talked about the high impact fund for CABA. Expand the Brookside renovation and remodeling project to include new features that will improve efficiency and operations. We've talked about that in the past as well. Replacing resident beds at Brookside. Purchase of a Freedom 100 workstation for the laboratory in the Health Division. These are very technical items. I couldn't tell you what this particular thing is, but these are the kind of things that that we are buying, and that's a capital project that we're spending some $55,000 on it. Replacing roofs at various county buildings per building recommendations of a roof consultant, and that looks like we were spending some $3 million, or authorized $3,075,000. Replacing I-beams over courtyards at the Kenosha County Detention Center. If you recall, we authorized that every year we're going to remodel a couple of courtrooms, and we have that down, at least in the CIP, at $1,800,000. Replacing existing fire alarm system in Kenosha County Courthouse. Rebuilding a foundation located at the southwest corner of the pretrial facility to prevent the further cracking of the building. I'll go on as long as you like, but I mean, it's, I have some 50 pages more to go, but
Supervisor Skalitsky, does that answer your question?
I would suggest that you read these, but it's, you know, we did review this at one point.
I've got my own budget.
I was more interested in the past, not last year's budget items, because I have been going up document 2010 and items that were listed in 2010.
I'm sorry, you know, you can't be heard in the back.
And all of those?
He made his point.
Okay, all right.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Bostrom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for allowing me to have another question or another comment. If I may, through the chair, to either Mr. Geertsen or, I apologize, our financial
Mr. Harrigan.
Mr. Harrigan, either one. Gentlemen, I've heard this a couple of times. We're borrowing less, we're borrowing less. We're not really borrowing less. Because of the rate environment, people were willing to pay a higher premium for our bonds. So we're borrowing the same. The P&I is still the same. It's just because somebody was willing to pay more for our bonds because we're offering a 2% yield, and the interest rates are 1.5%.
That's correct.
We're gathering more money, we're paying it out over interest.
Your project list hasn't changed.
Okay. So I just wanted to clarify, we're not borrowing less money here. It just looks better on paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Bostrom. Any other questions? Your button wasn't on, but okay. Supervisor Poole?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to say that I have some concerns over the growth of bonding in Kenosha County. Back in 2014, when I first got on the board, at year end, we had $99 million worth of bonds, and now, once this is approved, it'll be $119 million at the end of 2016 for a 20% increase, all during times of 1% gross domestic product growth. However, I agree it is an exceptional rate of 1.5488%. I mean, it's unheard of, and along with the upgrade of our rating to AA, and so I will support, but hope we can reduce the rate of bonding in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Poole. Supervisor Rose.
All right. I think one of the points that we made when we made our presentation to the two rating agencies is that we are still paying back, and this, I think, is a point to address to Supervisor Poole, and I think it's a valid concern for the public. We're still paying back more than we are paying back at a faster rate than we are borrowing. And if you look at that chart, you'll see that at the end. So that is, I think, one of the factors that was very persuasive to the agencies in considering that we do have some strong management controls here. What are your choices here? You can borrow nothing if you so choose. That's always an option to this board at budget time, and just say, no, this year we're not going to buy any squad cars, we're not going to buy those I-beams or install those I-beams, or we're not going to get those new resident beds. I mean, you can go right down that list and start checking off no new lab table at $55,000 for the health department, that costs too much. And, either strike them individually and or strike it all and save the money. At some point, you're going to have to do something with that road, you're going to have to do something with that squad car, etc. So that you can do, or you can strike some of them and borrow less, or you can just pay cash for everything too, and that we've seen that as a problem in Kenosha County too, where when the municipalities ran all their money out. What does that do to your rating the following year? So those are options as well. But I think the thing that we should be persuaded by is that we're still paying back at a faster rate.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Seeing no other lights, roll call has been requested. Yes, if you're in favor of the bonding, no if you are against it. Motion passes.
Resolution 36 from the Finance and Administration Committee, a resolution to accept 2016 Wisconsin Land Information Program Strategic Initiative Grant Award from the Department of Administration. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Gens, yes. Dodge, yes. Kubicki, yes. Esposito, yes. Retzlaff, yes.
Supervisor Rose.
All right, on behalf of the committee, I would move the resolution.
I have a first by Supervisor Rose and a second by Supervisor Ron Frederick. Supervisor Rose.
All right, thank you. This is a acceptance of a grant for 2016 for the Wisconsin Land Information Program Strategic Initiative agreement as set forth in the resolution to create a statewide digital parcel map. And there is no county money here. This is strictly receiving a grant money through that program.
Thank you, Supervisor Rose. Seeing no lights, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Resolution 37, 37, from the Planning Development Extension Education Committee, a resolution regarding the appointment of Christopher Brown to the Kenosha County Zoning Board of Adjustments. Decker excused, Poole, yes. Skalitsky, yes. Gilmore, yes. Bostrom, yes.
Supervisor Poole.
I move Resolution 37.
I have a first by Supervisor Poole and a second by Supervisor Gilmore. Supervisor Poole.
This resolution would appoint Christopher Brown to the Kenosha County Board of Adjustments. Mr. Brown will be succeeding himself and will serve until June 30, 2019, or until a successor is appointed by the county executive and confirmed by the Kenosha County Board of Supervisors. The Planning, Development, and Education Committee reviewed this item at their meeting of August 10, 2016, and recommend approval of the appointment. Mr. Brown did attend 2 of the 3 meetings and was excused from the 3rd.
Thank you, Supervisor Poole. Seeing no lights, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Resolution 38 from the Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee, a resolution regarding Jeffrey A. Badke, owner, request an amendment to the adopted land use plan map for Kenosha County 2035, map 65 of the comprehensive plan, from farmland protection, general agricultural and open land, INRA and non-farmed wetland, to farmland protection, suburban density residential, and non-farm wetland, town of Paris. Decker excused, Poole, yes. Skalitsky, yes. Gilmore, yes. Bostrom, yes.
Supervisor Poole.
I move Resolution 38.
I have a first by Supervisor Poole and a second by Supervisor Skalitsky. Supervisor Poole.
This property is located on the west side of County Highway MB, 1/4 mile south of the intersection with County Trunk Highway E. The state requires a resolution from the Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee and an ordinance from the full county board to amend the comprehensive plan. This resolution will allow an amendment to the Kenosha County Comprehensive Plan for a change from farmland protection, general agricultural and open land, INRA, and non-farmed wetland to farmland protection, suburban density residential, and non-farmed wetland. The town of Paris recommended approval of this request.
Thank you, Supervisor Poole. Seeing no lights, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Resolution 39 from the Planning, Development, Extension Education Committee, a resolution regarding proposed comprehensive plan amendment action 50 LLC owner, Mark Merkling agent, request an amendment to the adopted land use plan map for Kenosha County 2035, map 65 of the comprehensive plan, from suburban density residential and non-farm wetland to commercial and non-farm wetland, town of Wheatland. Decker excused, Poole, yes. Skalitsky, yes. Gilmore, yes. Bostrom, yes.
Supervisor Poole.
I move Resolution 39.
I have a first by Supervisor Poole and a second by Supervisor Bostrom. Supervisor Poole.
This property is located on the northwest corner of the intersection of County Trunk Highway 50 and 392nd Avenue, town of Wheatland. The state requires a resolution from the Planning, Development, and Extension Education Committee and an ordinance from the full county board to amend the comprehensive plan. This resolution will allow an amendment to the Kenosha County Comprehensive Plan for a change from suburban density residential and non-farmed wetland to commercial and non-farmed wetland. The town of Wheatland recommended approval of the request.
Thank you, Supervisor Poole. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Resolution 40 from the Public Works and Facilities Committee, a resolution for the delegation of approval authority for functional classification changes in rural areas. Alverman, yes. Grady, yes. O'Day excused. Gilmore, yes. Bostrom, yes. Franco, yes. Wambolt excused.
Supervisor Alverman.
I would move Resolution 40.
I have a first by Supervisor Alverman and a second by Supervisor Grady. Supervisor Alverman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The functional classification changes in rural areas is something that a whole lot of people haven't heard of before. And it's something that, as a county board supervisor, I haven't voted for before. Mr. Sipsmith said he didn't think it had gone before us in many, many years. But we need to have a qualified individual with the county that we are a stakeholder in these functional changes. And we think the most qualified individual is our highway commissioner, whoever that highway commissioner would be at any time. And so that is our proposal to you, and that's what this resolution is asking for. That the highway commissioner for Kenosha County be designated as our person in charge of those functional classification changes and reviews.
Thank you, Supervisor Overman. Supervisor Gens, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I read this twice, and it has not ever come before us, and I don't quite understand it. So I'm going to ask, what are they classifying and what are they doing?
If
the chair to
it could be as simple as the classification of a rustic road, or as large as the changing of a cross-traffic highway system, like Highway 12 used to be, into an interstate. So but what we're talking is rural. So we'd be looking at any change in classification, and the easiest example would be something like a rustic road. So it isn't something that's going to come before us. Our authorized representative will probably not be too swamped with this activity either.
So basically, they make changes or recommendations to road situations, right? And that's what they do.
But they can't just do it without us being a stakeholder and discussing it.
Right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Supervisor Gens. Seeing no other lights, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Resolution 41 from the Public Works and Facilities Committee, a resolution to approve the appointment of Matthew Collins as the Director of the Kenosha County Division of Parks. Elverman, yes. Grady, yes. Gilmore, yes. Wambolt, excused. Bostrom, yes. O'Day, excused. Franco, yes.
Supervisor Overman.
Move Resolution 41.
I have a first by Supervisor Overman and a second by Supervisor Franco. Supervisor Overman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The planning that we just discussed with our finances is something that the county administration and the Highway Parks Committee, Ray Arbett and his staff have done in looking for someone to lead us in this Parks Department. We all know that Mr. Rudy, John Rudy, who was with us for 42 years, has retired. And when he announced that to Mr. Cruiser, Ray, a year and a half, 2 years ago, we knew that this was coming. I think it was a whole new plan. I hadn't seen it done. And we have since done it, and we are actively trying to do the same thing because Mr. Sipsma has told us that he is doing the same thing. So getting someone on board to work with our individual in charge at the time, I thought was a fantastic process. So Mr. Collins was hired in June of 2015. After a long process of us recruiting, advertising, vetting Mr. Collins, I think it was Ray, possibly Jim called and said, we want you to meet this guy. We think we've got the guy. And when I met Matt, I thought we did also. Now, when you look at a Parks Department, you're looking at a quality of life thing for county individuals that pay for that department. It's taxes. People want to see something for what they're paying. They want to see roads plowed usually and a squad car. But parks are very important to people. And you have to have a passion for parks. It doesn't just fall when you're not in college and say, I guess I got 2 years left, I'm going to go into parks. It takes a quality individual that has that in their mind, and as I said, has a passion for it. Now, Mr. Rudy brought us into the next level. We have private-public partnerships like I've never seen. When you look at the bike trails that we built in Silver Lake, the disc golf, the dog parks, Pringle Nature Center, Kemper Center. John was very good at finding grants, finding ways to do these things. Now, Matt has got us moving in the next step, next level. Matt's training, Matt's degrees, and his passion for the position and for Kenosha County. So I was sold in the first few months. The county executive was sold, Ray Arbor was sold, and John Rudy told me he was sold early on by Matt. So I am urging your approval. Matt has been serving as interim, and this would move into the full-time position, leading our Parks Department into the next years. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Overman. Seeing no lights, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Resolution 42 from the Public Works and Facilities Committee and the Finance and Administration Committee, a resolution regarding Prairie Restoration Grant Award. Elverman, yes. Grady, yes. O'Day, excused. Gilmore, yes. Wambolt, excused. Bostrom, yes. Franco, yes. Rose, yes. Ron Frederick, yes. Gens, yes. Kubicki, yes. Retzloff, yes. Esposito, yes. Dodge, yes.
Supervisor Overman.
Move Resolution 42.
I have a first by Supervisor Overman, and second by Supervisor Rose. Supervisor Overman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I almost made a mistake. I was just going to say, if you look out these windows, you'll see this 20 acres, and I forgot where I was. I'm not out at the county center. This land that we're talking about is out at the Kenosha County Center. It is prairie. We've actually been leasing it to farmers out there. About a year ago, we made a hiking trail around the whole outside perimeter, and it's very, very used. I know we have walkers in that county center on the inside, but when I'm at meetings there during the day, a lot of activity. What this is a grant from the Forestry Service, $6,787, to help us restore that 20 acres into prairie. That'll pay for everything. We'll do some labor. That prairie seeds are rather expensive, and we've already talked to the neighboring farmer that will do the tilling for it. So it will be restored, planted, erosion-free, and that is what this grant is for, so I'd ask for your approval.
Thank you, Supervisor Overman. Seeing no lights, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Communication from Andy M. Bueller regarding future items scheduled before the Planning Development Extension Education Committee.
Receive and file.
Approval of the July 19, 2016 minutes by Supervisor Ron Frederick.
Supervisor Ron Frederick.
Madam Chairman, move to approve the minutes of July 19, 2016 meeting.
I have a first by Supervisor Ron Frederick and a second by Supervisor Kubicki. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Minutes have been approved. Do I have a motion to adjourn? I have a first by Supervisor Gens and a second by Supervisor Gable. All those in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.